Hello, I'm Toby Fox from 1.5 Million New Homes, the local government challenge, sponsored by Redloft and Mount Anvil and Pitman Tozer Architects. Now, every month I've been visiting a different council to find out what works and what needs to change to get more homes built. And this month I've come to Westminster. So I'm here with Lisa Ravenscroft, who is the Chief Growth Officer at Mount Anvil, a developer who is one of the co-sponsors of this season of 1.5 Million New Homes, the local government challenge with Westminster City Council. Lisa, hello. How do you feel about being part of this campaign and supporting councils in getting their voices heard on the issues of building homes?
Yeah, we're delighted to be part of it. So public-private partnerships is what Mount Anvil does. It's what we've always done in our 30 plus years in London. So we feel like we're very close to this challenge. We spend a lot of time with residents. We're very aware of the waiting list challenges, and we're very aware of the imperative to deliver that we're glad we get to play a role in.
And what's your relationship with Westminster City Council? What are you building in Westminster?
Yeah, so we have kicked off the Church Street partnership. So the first phase of that broader Church Street regeneration with Site A, and we're heading towards a start on site there. And really we've been working with this shared imperative to give the residents of Church Street what they've been waiting a good amount of time for, really.
So what is it you are delivering for them?
So we're in the Church Street partnership. We're going to deliver 450 homes in the local area, all the council homes re-provided, 50% affordable, and improved infrastructure for the Church Street market. That's the beating heart of that part of the community. So
in delivering all of your schemes, you have to work with local authorities. Tell us about the difference between different local authorities. How does that experience vary from one place to another?
Yeah, nice. I mean, we choose to work in joint venture partnership. That's really become our model. We think working in estate transformation really suits us. We think it suits our skill set. We talk about putting all our eggs in one basket and watching that basket very closely. And the reason for that is that, well, we think it's a really meaningful place to deploy our talents and the capabilities of our people first and foremost. These are long-term projects that require long-term thinking, lots of patience. And if you're going into a partnership, you're going into a relationship, really. So we believe that you're going to be navigating ups and downs. That's just part of it. And a really powerful joint venture partnership kind of knows how to do that and can have the grown-up conversations about the trade-offs and what's a win for all and what are we shooting for and how aligned are we from the outset and through the thick and thin to deliver something meaningful. And that's something I've noticed about working with Westminster that's been allowed us to get off to a quick start and kind of maintain that pace, is they are clear on what they want and they're clear on the governance mechanisms within the council to get things done. And they work with an intensity and a commitment that really suits us, which means we can have those challenging conversations to say, right, what's at play here? What's changed? We're in a difficult moment. I imagine everyone that you speak to will say the same thing. Prices have shifted around, the sales market is tough. So what's our kind of North Star for the community? What are the promises that we've made and how are we going to work together to deliver those?
So you talk about the council knowing what it wants. How does that manifest itself? Is that as simple as saying, we want X number of units and so many of them have to be affordable? Or are there sort of layers and nuances to that you have to work at uncovering?
So there are layers and nuances, but the overall picture is really coherent. There's a thorough Westminster strategy that is clear and that we have been well supported to understand. And fundamentally, I think it's also about the quality of leadership on all sides. When you're coming together, you're bringing two organisations together with a shared purpose. How intentional are you being at setting up that partnership? Are you making this a kind of a contractual dance, or are you making this a real relationship where you genuinely understand each other's kind of constraints and you stay shoulder to shoulder looking at the community rather than across the table looking at one another?
Brilliant. You paint a really good picture. How often are you able to do this? And what's your capacity to deliver? How many homes are you bringing forward at the moment? And what could you bring forward potentially?
Yeah, so we've got 5 schemes going through planning this year. Okay. We're wholly focused on London, all the eggs in that one basket, because we believe estate transformation delivered in partnership in London is going to be one of the keys to solving this housing crisis and to bringing the scale of homes forward that you're shooting for with this campaign.
But I've heard from different parties that the way that estate regeneration in particular is brought forward, that the kind of phasing of it is actually quite problematic for the private sector in some instances, in that you can have too many opportunities, too many eggs in that basket at one time. So would you like to see sort of more collaboration across London in the phasing of those schemes so that you're better able to absorb them as a sector?
Yeah, I mean, as a privately held company, I think we're able to be patient. And if one of the challenges you're talking about is delivering the affordable homes first, well, we think that's the right thing to do. We think that's how you build trust with the residents. So we are really selective about what we bid on and go for exactly the reasons that you're talking about. We believe we can do a really, really good job within a certain range of opportunities, which are, complex estate regen, zones 1 to 3 in London, where deep listening to the community is required. And we think if there are enough organisations of our size who are laser focused on that, we can get there. The other things that I think need to happen, as you're alluding to, is that wider stakeholder group. We think some of the work for the GLA has been brilliant, the Affordable Homes Programme and when and how much grant is coming into the sector. So we think that kind of pragmatism is absolutely necessary. And the other thing is regulation. So making sure that regulation as it is enacted with enough resource and enough structure to make sure that its original intentions are what gets delivered.
What are the differentiators? What needs to be in place for things to really work well? What needs to change?
Yeah, I think in the instances where estate transformation work goes really well, all parties are around the table and we're guided by that principle of the win for all, not the win-win. The win-win implies that somebody over there is losing, right? The win for all, the widest possible aperture that says, what does this place need and what are our roles in getting there? And the only certainty is the uncertainty. Things are going to change. These are long-term marriages. They're not short-term flings. And you need to have the relationship resilience to deal with that stuff with openness and candour. I think this is some of the most meaningful work that you can do, actually, with your career. I think there's no shortage of talent and capability. I think sometimes there are shortages of environments that unleash that. So rather than looking to, I often hear it, the kind of, comments about talent. I think there's plenty of talent, but is the organisation that you're in and then the microclimate that the partnership creates as you bring two organisations together, somewhere that people can bring their creativity, bring their best thinking, because there are going to be challenges and requirements to create trade-offs. So what's our responsibility for creating that environment that unleashes the great people that we've got to go, we can do hard things, we can solve difficult problems in an environment of openness, trust, candour, because it's not easy. If it was easy, everyone would be doing it.
Well, you've talked about dancing, you've talked about flings and long-term relationships and marriages and so on. How much of, how do you translate those sorts of emotions, if you like, into a kind of corporate culture?
I think it starts with being clear about what you want. A partnership is a relationship. There's a reason you go into a joint venture partnership rather than kind of a contract, a traditional relationship. A joint venture, the clue is in that J word, joint. So what are our shared aspirations? What are our shared expectations? One of the areas of commonality that I think we found with working with Westminster is that they want to work at pace, and that's great. So we set an expectation early that we will move decisively, we'll move at pace, we set stretching targets for when different things happened. Great, it's clear, shoulder to shoulder, looking at the targets, rather than sizing each other up or kind of wasting time on that alignment piece. Invest time early, it's the best time you'll spend, and treat it as a long-term relationship.
Lisa, thank you very much indeed for your contribution to 1.5 million new homes.
Thanks, Toby.
And that's it for another episode of 1.5 Million New Homes, the Local Government Challenge, sponsored by Redloft and Mount Anvil and Pitman Tozer Architects. And that's it from the City of Westminster. We're going to be back next month with the London Borough of Camden. Until then, please hit like and subscribe, and we'd be very grateful if you do. And we look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you very much indeed for watching.